Ethan Wilson, a 35-year-old software engineer from Denver, sat at his desk in the office of a startup software company. His fingers tapped away on the keyboard, but his mind was elsewhere, in Montana, where he was supposed to be spending the weekend fishing with friends. His face was focused on the computer screen, but his mind was filled with images of Flathead Lake, fishing rods, and cold beers by the fire. The trip had been planned for months, and Ethan was already looking forward to releasing the stress of his daily work life. "Hey, Wilson, are you in the clouds again?" came the voice of a colleague, Jenna Martin, a 28-year-old tester, who sat 2 desks away. She leaned back in her chair, munching on an apple. "Or are you mentally fishing for trout?" Ethan chuckled, looking up from his code. "Yes, Jenna, I can already imagine myself pulling a 5-kilogram fish. And you'd better check that authorization bug that I sent you yesterday." "Oh, relax, it's almost here." She rolled her eyes, but smiled. "Seriously, you're glowing about this trip. When are you leaving?" "Tomorrow morning," Ethan said, checking his watch. It was 4:47 on a Friday, and he planned to leave early to pack. "Unless Trevor forgets to fix his truck, we're going nowhere without it." "Trevor, the guy who owns the brewery?" interjected Paul, their sysadmin, 42, a balding guy with a dragon tattoo on his forearm. He approached with a mug of coffee. "I tried his IPA last week. Not bad, but damn expensive." "Yeah, that's him," Ethan nodded. "And yeah, he always says quality costs money, but his truck is a piece of junk. I hope it doesn't let me down." Jenna giggled. "If anything, take my Subaru. Just don't forget to wash it after your fishing adventures." "I'll remember," Ethan smiled, but his thoughts had already returned to the trip. He imagined himself and Trevor and 2 other friends, Kevin and Ryan, sitting by the water, discussing work, sports, and of course, teasing each other. It was a tradition he cherished. At 5:10 p.m., Ethan closed his laptop, said goodbye to his coworkers, and headed to the parking lot. His gray 2018 Jeep Cherokee was waiting in its spot. He threw his backpack in the back seat and turned on the radio. An Imagine Dragons song was playing, and Ethan nodded slightly to the beat as he pulled onto I-25. Denver was glowing in the setting sun, and the mood was high. At home, in their 2-story house in the Stapleton neighborhood, Melanie, a 33-year-old marketer to whom he had been married for 9 years, was waiting for him. Ethan parked in the garage, grabbed his backpack, and walked through the side door into the kitchen. The smell of garlic and tomato sauce hit his nose. Melanie was making pasta. "Hi, darling," he called, throwing the keys on the counter. Melanie emerged from the living room, drying her hands on a towel. Her brown hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and there was a smile in her blue eyes. She was wearing a white t-shirt and jeans, and Ethan thought, for the umpteenth time, that she looked as young as she had when they first met in college. "You're early," she said, coming up and kissing him on the cheek. "Dinner's almost ready. How's your day?" "Fine." Ethan opened the fridge and took out a bottle of water. Jenna was blabbering about her tests again, and Paul was complaining about the prices at Trevor's brewery. The usual circus. Melanie laughed as she returned to the stove. "Paul always complains. Remember how he whined for half an hour about the cost of parking at last year's corporate party?" "Oh yeah," Ethan chuckled, sitting down at the kitchen island. "What about you? What's going on in your office?" "Oh, nothing." Melanie stirred the sauce. "Presentation next week, lots of revisions from the client. But I can handle it. You know I always can." "I know," Ethan smiled. Melanie was a star in her firm, and he was proud of her success. "By the way, I leave tomorrow at 6 in the morning. I'll be back Sunday evening." "Okay," she nodded. "I'm planning a hen night with the girls while you're gone. Lisa, Amber, maybe Kate will drop by. Wine, gossip, the usual." "Just don't burn the house down," Ethan winked. "I promise." Melanie turned around, holding a spoon with sauce. "Try it. How do you like it?" Ethan tried it and gave it a thumbs up. "Perfect. Can you ever cook something that doesn't taste good?" "No way," she smirked. They ate dinner at the dining room table, discussing small details. The new coffee maker Melanie wanted, the Broncos game Ethan was going to see in Montana, and their vacation plans for next year. After dinner, Ethan cleared the dishes and Melanie went upstairs to answer work emails. He turned on the dishwasher and went up to the bedroom, where he began packing his backpack. Fishing rods, a sleeping bag, extra socks, a flashlight. "Don't forget your sunscreen," Melanie called from across the hallway in the office. "Or you'll get burned again like last year." "Already in the backpack," Ethan responded, checking the bag. "And the first aid kit, too." "My Boy Scout," Melanie walked into the bedroom holding her phone. "Look, Lisa just sent a picture of her new puppy. Isn't he cute?" Ethan looked at the screen, a golden retriever with huge eyes. "He's cute, but our cat would beat him." He nodded at the ginger cat named Taco, sleeping on the windowsill. "Taco can beat anyone," Melanie agreed, sitting down on the bed. "Okay, I'll work for another hour, and don't stay up too long. You have to get up early." Agreed. Ethan kissed her on the forehead and returned to packing. The night passed peacefully. Ethan went to bed around 11, hugging Melanie, who was already falling asleep with her tablet in her hands. He thought about how lucky he was. A stable job, a comfortable home, a wife with whom he was building a future. They talked about a child, maybe in a year or two, when Melanie was settled in her new position. Ethan fell asleep smiling. The next morning at 5:30, his alarm rang. He dressed quietly so as not to wake Melanie, left her a note in the kitchen, "Love you, be back soon," and drove to Trevor's, who lived 10 minutes away. The sky was gray, but Ethan was full of energy. Trevor met him at his house, standing by his pickup truck with the hood open, his beard unkempt and a wrench in his hand. "Bad news, brother," Trevor said, wiping his hands with a rag. "This thing is dead. The radiator is gone, and I only found out yesterday. It'll take a couple of days to fix." "Seriously?" Ethan frowned, looking at the truck. "What are Kevin and Ryan saying?" "I already called them," Trevor sighed. "Kevin offered to reschedule for next week, but Ryan has a shift then. Anyway, everything is canceled." Ethan rubbed his temples. Months of planning down the drain. "Okay," he said finally. "Then I'll spend the weekend at home. Melanie will be happy." "Right," Trevor clapped him on the shoulder. "A surprise for the wife. Maybe she'll bake a pie or whatever you married guys do." "Very funny," Ethan rolled his eyes. "Okay, I'm going home. Call me if anything happens." "Agreed. And sorry, brother," Trevor looked guilty. Ethan got into his Jeep and drove back. It was 6:20 m, and he decided to stop at the coffee shop on the corner of their street. It was crowded. A couple of college students with laptops, an older woman reading a newspaper, and a guy in a hard hat ordering a muffin. "Hello, Ethan," said the barista Sophie, a 19-year-old student who worked part-time in the mornings. "Is it too early for you?" "Yeah, the trip fell through," he shrugged. "Give me 2 lattes, 1 caramel for Melanie." "Oh, romance," Sophie smiled, starting to prepare the order. "How's your cat doing? Hasn't he torn the house apart yet?" "Taco. He's too lazy for that." Ethan pulled out a map. "But Melanie says he steals her socks." "Classic." Sophie handed him the glasses. "Good luck with the surprise." Ethan thanked him and left. The house was quiet. Melanie was still asleep. He put the coffee on the nightstand, but decided against waking her up, letting her sleep. Instead, he went downstairs, turned on the TV, and watched sports while sipping his latte. Taco the cat jumped on the couch and curled up next to him. By 8 a.m., Ethan was getting some work done. He checked his email, a couple of work emails that could wait, and started cleaning out the garage. It was a mess. Old boxes, ski gear he and Melanie hadn't used in years, and a toolbox. He found an old baseball glove he hadn't seen since high school and smiled as he remembered playing with his dad. "Ethan, are you home?" Melanie's voice came from above. "Yeah, in the garage," he shouted, wiping the dust off his hands. Melanie came downstairs in her pajamas, holding coffee. I found your surprise, she smiled. What happened to the trip? Trevor's car broke down, Ethan shrugged. We decided to cancel. I don't want to go without him. That's too bad, Melanie leaned against the door frame. But I'm glad you're home. Maybe we can go to a movie tonight. Sounds good, Ethan nodded. Just without your rom-coms, okay? I don't promise anything, she winked and went upstairs. Ethan turned back to the boxes, but his thoughts were on Melanie. He loved moments like this simple, cozy. He and Melanie had been through a lot. The move to Denver, her promotion, his long hours at the startup. But now their lives were stable, and he felt they were on the right track. He even started thinking about a nursery in their house. By lunchtime, Melanie came downstairs, already dressed in a light dress. I'm going to the office to finish a couple of slides, she said, taking her keys. I'll be back by 6. Want to order some pizza? Perfect, Ethan kissed her. Good luck with the presentation. Thank you, she smiled and left. Ethan Wilson pulled into his street in the Stapleton section of Denver around 8:30 p.m. on a Saturday night, his gray Jeep Cherokee bouncing gently over the familiar potholes. He'd just left Trevor's house, where he'd spent half an hour discussing canceling a fishing trip with Kevin and Ryan. Ethan had suggested postponing the trip until next month, but Kevin was busy at work and Ryan was grumbling that his shift at the hospital was ruining everything. They decided to postpone it until the fall. Ethan, though disappointed, was excited to be home to Melanie. He imagined them ordering Chinese takeout, maybe opening a bottle of wine, and spending the evening together. The street was quiet, except for the neighbor's dog, a Labrador named Max, barking in the distance. Ethan noticed the lights in the windows of their 2-story house and smiled. Melanie was clearly home, and judging by the cars in the driveway, her bachelorette party was in full swing. The black Toyota RAV4 of Melanie's college friend Lisa Graham was parked next to the white Honda Civic of Amber Torres, Melanie's colleague at a marketing firm. Another car, a blue Ford Focus, looked unfamiliar, but Ethan assumed it was one of Melanie's new friends. She had mentioned that she might call Kate, a friend she knew from the yoga studio. Ethan parked in the garage, turned off the engine, and picked up his phone to text Melanie, "Surprise, I'm home. Fishing trip canceled. Don't be alarmed, I'll be right there." But he glanced at the screen and changed his mind. Better to go inside and see her reaction. He imagined Melanie squealing in surprise and Lisa teasing him for ruining their girl party. Ethan grabbed his backpack from the back seat where his fishing rods and sleeping bag were kept and headed for the front door. The house was warm and smelled of vanilla candles, which Melanie loved. An empty bottle of Chardonnay sat on the kitchen counter, along with 3 glasses with lipstick marks. Ethan grinned. It looked like the bachelorette party was off to a great start. He dropped his backpack by the stairs and headed toward the living room, but stopped when he heard loud laughter coming from the backyard. The French doors to the patio were ajar, and voices were clear. Ethan recognized Melanie's laugh, the raspy, high-pitched laughter that came when she'd had more than one drink. "Girls, I'm serious, that was epic," Melanie said, her voice a little louder than usual. He was like, "Mel, are you sure this is for work?" And I just smile and nod. Ethan paused at the door, his hand on the handle. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but something in Melanie's tone made him wary. She often told her friends about clients, but her voice sounded different now, not like it usually did when she was complaining about a nagging boss or bragging about a good deal. "You're the queen of disguise," Lisa replied, her words accompanied by a giggle. "How do you never get confused in these stories?" "Practice, Lisa, practice," Melanie chuckled, and Ethan heard the glass clink as she set it down on the table. "Ethan doesn't even know I've been sleeping with Brian for 2 years now." Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. His hand froze on the doorknob, and his feet seemed rooted to the floor. He wanted to convince himself that he had misheard, that this was a joke, but Melanie continued. "Seriously, girls, he's so trusting. Yesterday, I told him I'd be late at the office, but I was at Brian's. He got a room at that hotel on Colfax with a jacuzzi. Ethan was asking me this morning how the client meeting went, and I was like, Oh, boring, nothing but spreadsheets. And he believed me. The silence was broken by the laughter of her friends. Amber, whose voice was deeper than Lisa's, added, Mel, you're unreal. I couldn't do that. My face would give it away. Well, Amber, that's a talent, Melanie said proudly. Brian says I could be a spy. Remember when I missed Ethan's birthday? I said I had the flu, and Brian and I went to Vegas for the weekend. Ethan even sent flowers with a get-well note. I nearly died laughing. Ethan stood motionless. His heart was pounding so loudly he was afraid he would be heard. He wanted to rush in, to shout, to demand an explanation, but his body wouldn't obey. Lisa spoke again. Wait, how did you explain the photos from Vegas? You posted stories on Instagram. Oh, that's easy, Melanie giggled. She said they were old photos from a bachelorette party 2 years ago. Ethan doesn't even check. He doesn't even know anything about social media. Brilliant, Lisa replied. But Mel, aren't you scared? Like, what if he finds out? Oh, come on, Melanie waved her hand, and Ethan heard her pouring wine. Ethan's too busy with his work and his fishing trips. He thinks we have the perfect marriage. He even said yesterday that he wanted to start planning for a baby. Can you imagine? Amber gasped. A child? Mel, are you serious? What did you tell him? I said I'd think about it. Melanie laughed. But girls, I'm not ready for kids. Brian says it'll kill all the passion. I like it the way it is now. Ethan backed away from the door slowly, trying not to make a sound. His thoughts were racing. 9 years of marriage, their talk of the future, her smiles, her hugs, was it all a lie? He walked through the living room, barely noticing the scattered pillows on the couch and the coffee table with a bowl of chips and empty bottles. By the stairs, he spotted Melanie's bag, with her planner sticking out. He briefly considered opening it, but decided against it. He needed to get out. He quietly took the keys from the counter and walked out the front door. The cold evening air hit him in the face, but Ethan barely noticed. He got into his Jeep, started the engine, and just sat there, looking at the lighted windows of the house. The laughter from the backyard was muffled, but every word Melanie said echoed in his head. 2 years, Brian, trusting. Ethan pulled out his phone and opened a chat with Trevor. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. What should he type? Melanie is cheating on me. It sounded unreal, like a scene from a bad movie. Instead, he typed, Bro, are you home? We need to talk. But he didn't send it. He wasn't ready to say it, even to Trevor. Instead, he opened Google and typed in, What to do if your wife is cheating. The screen is filled with articles and forums. Gather evidence. Don't confront her right away. Talk to a lawyer. Ethan scrolled through a few headlines, but closed the browser. It was too much. He dropped his phone on the passenger seat and gripped the steering wheel. At that moment, a neighbor, Mr. Carter, a 60-year-old retired teacher, walked down the street, walking his Labrador Max. He spotted Ethan and waved. Hey, Ethan, back from fishing already? He called, coming closer. Ethan forced a smile. Nope, the trip is canceled. Trevor's car broke down. Oh, that's too bad, Mr. Carter shook his head. Well, at least you'll get to spend time with Melanie. Did you see that hen party you're having? Max was going crazy laughing at them. Yeah, Ethan nodded, trying to keep his voice even. They're having fun. Well, I won't interfere, Mr. Carter pulled Max by the leash. If anything, come in. I have a new set of fishing rods. I'll show you. Thank you. Ethan waved his hand, and the neighbor left. Ethan watched Mr. Carter disappear around the corner and felt a deepening emptiness inside him. He couldn't go back into the house, not now. But he didn't dare go to Trevor's either. Instead, he started the car and drove toward the nearby park, where he sometimes jogged in the mornings. It was dark there, only the streetlights illuminating the paths. Ethan parked, turned off the headlights, and leaned back in the seat. He picked up his phone again and opened his gallery. The last photo was of him and Melanie on a picnic 2 weeks ago. She was laughing, holding a hot dog, and he had his arm around her shoulders. Ethan zoomed in, looking at her face. How could she lie like that? He scrolled through. Their vacation in California, her birthday, their cat Taco on the windowsill. Every photo seemed fake now. Ethan closed his eyes and tried to breathe evenly. He didn't know what to do next, but one thing was clear. His life had just changed forever. He sat in his car, listening to the clock tick on the dashboard, trying to figure out how to live with this new, terrible knowledge. Ethan Wilson was driving home through the quiet streets of the Denver suburb of Stapleton in his gray Jeep Cherokee. It was about 8:30 on a Saturday night, and he was still processing the cancellation of his Montana fishing trip. Trevor had called an hour earlier, confirming that the truck was dead for good, and Ethan had decided to head home to spend the weekend with Melanie. He turned on the radio, a Coldplay song was playing, but he barely listened, thinking about how happy Melanie would be to see him home early. As Ethan pulled up to their two-story house, he noticed two cars parked at the curb. Lisa's black Toyota RAV4 and Amber's red Honda Civic. Melanie had mentioned a bachelorette party with her friends, so it didn't raise any questions. He parked in the garage, grabbed his backpack from the back seat, and walked through the side door into the kitchen. An empty wine bottle and 3 glasses with pink lipstick stains sat on the counter. Music was playing from the living room, the kind of pop track Melanie liked to play at parties. "Mel," Ethan called, setting his backpack down. There was no answer, but he heard laughter coming from the backyard. The door to the patio was ajar, and the voices were getting louder. Ethan smiled. Melanie was clearly enjoying herself. He decided to go out and say hello, maybe even join her for a few minutes before leaving them alone. He walked through the living room, where chips, a cheese plate, and another bottle of wine lay on the coffee table. Taco the cat dozed on the couch, oblivious to the noise. Ethan pushed open the glass doors to the patio, but stopped when he heard his name. Melanie's voice, slightly slurred, cut through the night air. "Ethan doesn't even suspect that I've been sleeping with Brian for 2 years," she said, and her words were accompanied by an explosion of laughter. Ethan froze at the door, his hand frozen on the handle. He couldn't move, as if his feet were rooted to the floor. His heart pounded and his ears began to ring. He stepped back carefully, so as not to be seen, and pressed himself against the wall next to the door. The terrace was 10 paces away, lit by fairy lights, and the voices were clear. "Oh my God, Mel, are you serious? 2 years?" It was Lisa, her voice shaking with laughter. "And he never suspected?" "Never," Melanie giggled, and Ethan heard his glass clink. "He's too busy with his coding job. He comes home, eats dinner, watches his football, and sleeps. And well, let's say I find ways to have fun." "You're the queen of covert operations," Amber added, her tone a mixture of admiration and mockery. "Is Brian even worth it?" "Oh, he does," Melanie lowered her voice, but Ethan could still hear. "He knows what I want. It's not like Ethan with his let's budget or when are we going to start remodeling the bathroom." Ethan felt the blood rush to his face. He clenched his fists, trying to breathe evenly. He wanted to rush in, to scream, but he stayed where he was, listening to every word. "How do you do it?" Lisa asked. "Like, without being noticed?" "Easy," Melanie paused, as if savoring the moment. "When he's on night shifts, Brian comes here, or I go to him if his wife's away. And then there's my conferences. Vegas last year, remember? Ethan thought I was at a marketing seminar." "Vegas," Amber clapped her hands. "You sent a picture of yourself with a cocktail by the pool. Said it was with coworkers." "Yeah," Melanie laughed. "There was only one colleague, and he definitely wasn't from the office." Ethan closed his eyes, trying to process what he'd heard. 2 years. 2 years of lies. He remembered Melanie coming back from that trip, hugging him, telling him she missed him. He'd cooked her dinner, bought her flowers, and she'd... Look, what if he finds out? Lisa suddenly became more serious. "Ethan seems like a normal guy. Aren't you afraid he'll freak out?" "He won't know," Melanie snapped. "He trusts me 100%. Plus, he's not the type to go through my phone or my accounts. Too predictable." "Predictable is an understatement," Amber chuckled. I remember him talking about some project management software for 2 hours at Kate's party. I almost fell asleep. Oh, yeah, Melanie sighed. Sometimes I wonder why I even married him. But he's stable. House, salary, all that. And Brian, he's for the soul. Ethan felt his throat tighten. He leaned against the wall, afraid his legs would give out. His marriage, his love, his life, it was all a lie. He wanted to leave, but his legs wouldn't obey. He continued to listen, as if punishing himself. Another woman appeared on the terrace, Kate, judging by her voice. Ethan had seen her a couple of times. Tall, blonde, a realtor, fond of bright dresses and loud laughter. "Girls, I brought more wine," Kate announced. "What did I miss?" "Melanie told me how she led Ethan by the nose," Lisa giggled. "2 years with this Brian and no suspicions." "Oh my God, Mel, you're my hero," Kate laughed as she opened the bottle. "I couldn't do that. My ex was checking up on me every step of the way, and Ethan doesn't seem to know where you've been." "And he won't," Melanie sounded confident. "He thinks I'm the perfect wife. He even brought me coffee in bed yesterday morning. If he knew I was with Brian the night before." "On your couch?" Amber gasped. "The one where he watches his TV shows?" "Yeah," Melanie chuckled. "He did look at us like we were idiots, though." All four of them burst into laughter. Ethan felt sick. He remembered making Melanie an omelet yesterday morning, her smiling, her thank you. And she had just come back from another man. On their couch. In their house. "Okay, enough about me." Melanie changed the subject. "Kate, how's your new client? The one who wanted $1 million house?" "Oh, that jerk." Kate started to talk about some customer, but Ethan wasn't listening anymore. His thoughts were in a tangle. He slowly walked away from the door and sat down on the couch next to Taco. The cat opened one eye, but didn't move. Ethan pulled out his phone, opened the chat with Trevor, but didn't know what to say. "Melanie is cheating on me," seemed too real to type. He put the phone away and stared at the floor. The laughter from the terrace continued. Now they were discussing Amber's new bag. As if nothing had happened. As if his life hadn't fallen apart in 5 minutes. He stood up, grabbed his keys, and quietly walked out the front door. He got into his car, started the engine, and just sat there, looking at the neighbor's house. Mrs. Carter, an elderly neighbor, was watering the flowers on her porch. She waved at him, and Ethan forced himself to smile, waving back. "Ethan, are you okay?" she called, wiping her hands on her apron. "You look pale." "I'm fine, Mrs. Carter," he replied, trying to keep his voice from shaking. "Just tired." "Well, rest then," she smiled. "And tell Melanie to come by. I have a pie recipe for her." "I'll tell you." Ethan nodded and slowly drove out into the street. He didn't know where he was going, but staying home was unbearable. He drove a few blocks and stopped at a park. It was empty, except for a guy walking his dog in the distance. Ethan turned off the engine and opened the window. The cool air brought him back to his senses a little. He remembered every word Melanie had said, every taunt. 2 years. Brian. Ethan Wilson stood in the living room of his home in the Denver suburb of Stapleton, leaning against the wall by the glass doors to the deck. The laughter of Melanie and her friends Lisa, Amber, and Kate drifted from the backyard, each giggle cutting into him like a knife. He had just heard Melanie, his wife of 9 years, brag about cheating on him for 2 years with Brian Crow. She had called him predictable, naive, and their marriage a comfortable stability, while Brian was, for fun. Ethan clenched his fists so hard his nails dug into his palms. He wanted to storm out onto the deck, to scream, to smash something, but he couldn't move. His feet were rooted to the floor, and there was an emptiness growing in his chest. Taco the cat, napping on the couch, opened one eye and looked at him lazily. Ethan glanced at the coffee table. Chips, a cheese plate, an empty bottle of wine. Everything looked so ordinary, as if his world hadn't fallen apart in the last 5 minutes. The laughter from the patio turned to a discussion of Amber's new bag, and Ethan realized he couldn't stay here. He retreated quietly to the front door, trying not to make a sound. He grabbed his keys from the kitchen counter and walked out, closing the door gently behind him. It was chilly outside. About 8:45 p.m., his gray Jeep Cherokee was parked in the garage, but Ethan didn't start it right away. He got behind the wheel, threw his phone on the passenger seat, and just stared at the neighbor's house across the street. Mrs. Carter, an elderly neighbor, was still watering her flowers despite the darkness. She was silhouetted by the porch light. She spotted Ethan and waved. "Ethan, where are you going so late?" she called, setting the watering can on the steps. "Melanie's home?" "Yeah, she's with her friends." Ethan forced a smile as he opened the window. "Just stopping by for a beer." "Well, don't go away," Mrs. Carter shook her head. "And tell Melanie I'm expecting her with that pie recipe." "I will," Ethan nodded, feeling his throat tighten. He started the engine and drove slowly out onto the street, trying not to attract attention. In the rearview mirror, he saw Mrs. Carter returning to her flowers and the lights on the deck of their house flickering over the fence. Ethan didn't know where he was going. He just sped along the quiet streets of Stapleton, past identical houses with neat lawns. The radio was silent, and in the silence he could only hear the hum of the engine and his own heavy breathing. His thoughts were a jumble. Melanie, Brian, 2 years, their couch, Vegas, his birthday. Each memory was a blow. He remembered how last year Melanie had called in sick, and he had spent the day fussing over her, bringing her tea, putting on her favorite TV show. And she had been with Brian, in a hotel, on his dime. A few blocks later, Ethan pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour Walmart. The huge lot was nearly empty, just a couple of cars parked out front and a shopping cart abandoned in the middle of the row. He parked away from the lights, turned off the engine, and leaned back in the seat. His hands began to shake in the darkness. He gripped the steering wheel, trying to stop the shaking, but it didn't help. His chest tightened, and he realized he was breathing too fast. "Shit, shit, shit," he muttered, slamming his fist on the steering wheel. The pain in his arm had spared him a bit, but his mind was still spinning. How could she? Why? What had he done wrong? He remembered every word Melanie had said. "He trusts me 100%. Too predictable. Her taunts, the laughter of his friends. Lisa, Amber, Kate, they all knew. They were all laughing at him. Ethan pulled out his phone, opened the chat with Trevor, but his fingers froze over the screen. What should he type? "My wife is cheating on me." It sounded too real, too final. He put the phone away and closed his eyes, trying to compose himself. 10 minutes passed, but it didn't get any easier. Finally, he picked up the phone again and dialed Trevor. "Yo, Ethan, what's up?" Trevor answered on the second ring. In the background, he could hear the TV and a child's voice, his nephew, probably visiting. "Are you home yet?" Was Melanie happy about the surprise? "Trev," Ethan swallowed, his voice shaking. "I need to talk. Not on the phone. Can you meet?" "Hey, what happened?" Trevor immediately became serious. "Where are you?" "In the Walmart parking lot on Colfax." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "Just come over, okay?" "I'm on my way." Trevor paused. "Are you okay? Did you do anything wrong?" "No, just come over." Ethan hung up and tossed the phone on the seat. He opened the window, and cool air rushed into the car. A dog barked in the distance, and at the entrance to Walmart, a guy in an orange vest was collecting shopping carts, humming. Ethan watched him, trying to distract himself. A guy in his 20s, with long hair pulled back into a ponytail, was pushing carts toward the store. He stopped to answer the phone, and Ethan heard a snatch of conversation. "Yes, Mom, I'll be there until midnight." "No, I didn't forget. I'll buy some milk." The guy rolled his eyes, but smiled. Ethan turned away. A normal life. Everyone had one, except him. 15 minutes later, Trevor's black Ford F-150 pulled into the parking lot. He parked next to Ethan's Jeep and got out holding a bottle of water. His beard was unkempt, and his T-shirt bore the logo of his brewery. Trevor knocked on the window. "Hey, open up," he said, looking at Ethan. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Ethan opened the door and stepped out. He didn't know where to start. Trevor leaned against his truck, crossing his arms. "Well, spill it," he said. "What happened? Did you and Melanie have a row?" Ethan shook his head and began to speak, slowly at first, then faster. "I came home. I wanted to surprise her. She was on the terrace with her friends. I heard her." He paused, swallowed. "She said she'd been sleeping with someone named Brian for 2 years, that I didn't suspect anything, that I was predictable." They all laughed, Trev. Lisa, Amber, Kate. Everyone knew. Trevor froze, his eyebrows rising. "Wait, what?" He put the bottle on the hood. "Melanie? Your Melanie? Cheating? Are you sure?" "I heard every word," Ethan said, his jaw clenching. "She bragged about how he'd come over to our house when I was at work, how they'd gone to Vegas when I thought she was at a conference, how she'd missed my birthday because she was at a hotel with him." "Shit!" Trevor ran a hand through his hair. This is just some kind of shit. Are you sure you got something wrong? Maybe she was joking." "She was kidding?" Ethan raised his voice, but then stopped when he saw the cart guy glance in their direction. "She told me about them on our couch, while I was on shift. This isn't a joke, Trev." Okay, Trevor held up his hands. "I believe you. It's just, shit, I don't know what to say. Melanie always seemed so right." "Yeah, I thought so too." Ethan smiled bitterly. "And she called me naive. Said I trusted her 100%. Trevor shook his head, looking at the asphalt. "Look, bro, this sucks. But you can't just sit here and freak out. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Ethan shrugged. "I couldn't stay there. I couldn't look at her. I wanted to break something, but I just left." "And you did the right thing," Trevor clapped him on the shoulder. "If you had burst in, it would have been worse. You need to think clearly. Don't come home today, okay?" "Where should I go?" Ethan looked at him. "I'm definitely not going to my place." "Let's go to my place." Trevor nodded at his pickup. "My couch is free. There's plenty of beer in the fridge. My nephew went to his sister's, so it's quiet. We'll talk, figure out what's next." Ethan nodded, feeling himself relax a little. He was still in shock, but Trevor's presence helped. "Okay," he said. "Just don't tell anyone, okay? I don't know how to deal with this myself." "Grave," Trevor raised his hand. "Come on, let's go. Leave the Jeep here, pick it up tomorrow." Ethan locked the car and climbed into Trevor's truck. The interior smelled of leather and coffee. In the back seat were a couple of his empty beer cans and an old football. Trevor turned on the radio, but turned it down. "Want to stop for burgers?" he asked, pulling out of the parking lot. "There's a place on the corner that's open until 11. "I don't want to," Ethan shook his head. "My stomach is tied in knots." "I understand," Trevor nodded. "Then home. I have chips and, if I'm lucky, yesterday's pizza." They were silent on the way. Ethan looked out the window, where streetlights and rare passers-by flashed by. A guy with a bicycle was standing at the gas station. Next to him, a girl in a bright jacket was telling something animatedly. Ordinary people, ordinary life. Ethan felt like a stranger in this world. They got out of the car at Trevor's house, a one-story cottage with an overgrown lawn. It was warm inside and smelled of wood and something spicy. Trevor was probably experimenting with sauces for his brewery again. "Make yourself comfortable." Trevor nodded toward the sofa. "Beer." "Come on." Ethan sat up, watching the TV where a basketball game was playing again. Trevor brought 2 bottles of his IPA and plopped down next to him. "Listen," he began, opening the bottle. "I'm not an expert on marriages, you know. I'm not very good at it after the divorce. But you need to take a breath and think. Maybe in the morning it won't be so bad." "No," Ethan took a sip. "She lied to my face for 2 years. 2 years, Trev. I thought we were planning a family, and she—" "Yeah, that's shit," Trevor nodded. "But you're not going to solve anything now. Have a drink, get some sleep, and we'll figure it out tomorrow. Maybe we'll find a lawyer or something." Ethan Wilson sat on the worn leather sofa in Trevor Lynch's living room, clutching a bottle of IPA from a friend's brewery. The clock on the wall said 9:30 on a Saturday night, but time seemed to have stopped. Less than an hour earlier, Ethan had overheard his wife, Melanie, bragging to her friends about how she had been cheating on him with Brian Crow for 2 years. Her words, "Ethan has no idea, he's too predictable," echoed in his head. He had fled the house, unable to face her, and was now at Trevor's bungalow a few miles outside Stapleton. Trevor's living room was typical bachelor territory: a large TV with an Xbox, a coffee table covered in empty cans and brewing magazines, and an old rug that Trevor had been vowing to clean since last year. On the wall was a poster of his brewery, Lynch's Brew, and next to it were a few photos of him and his friends, including one of Ethan on a fishing trip last year. Ethan stared at the photo of him and Trevor, each holding a fish, smiling at the camera. Things had been simple back then. "Hey, how are you?" Trevor came out of the kitchen, holding a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. His beard was disheveled, and his t-shirt with the words, "Keep calm and drink craft," was slightly wrinkled. "Not much beer, I see. Give me something stronger." Ethan shrugged, placing the bottle on the table. "Go ahead. Just don't get me drunk. I feel bad as it is." Not fanatical, Trevor sat down in the chair opposite and poured whiskey into glasses. "Just to calm your nerves. You're all wound up." Ethan picked up the glass and took a sip. The liquid burned his throat, but he barely noticed. His thoughts were on Melanie, her laughter, her lies, her "I love you" that morning. He stood up and began pacing the living room, from the TV to the window and back again. "I can't get it out of my head, Trev," he said, stopping at the beer stand. 2 years, 2 years, and I never noticed. What an idiot I am." "Stop," Trevor raised his hand. "You're not an idiot. She lied to you. It was her choice, not yours. Don't start blaming yourself." Ethan shook his head, continuing to walk. "But I should have noticed something. It wasn't just one slip. It's been 2 years, Trev. 2 years of her looking me in the eye and lying. And like a fool, I believed her. Because you're a normal guy." Trevor leaned back in his chair. "You trusted her. It's not a crime. She took advantage of it, that's all." Ethan paused, looking out the window. It was dark outside. Only a streetlight illuminated the neighbor's yard, where a teenager was skateboarding despite the late hour. "You know what the worst part is?" Ethan turned to Trevor. "She said I was predictable, that I was there for stability, and this Brian was there for the soul. It was like I don't know, furniture." "Damn, that's harsh," Trevor winced. "But bro, that's her problem, not yours. She decided she could live a double life. It's not about you, it's about her." Ethan sat back on the couch, rubbing his temples. "I remember everything. Little things. She started putting her phone face down probably a year ago. I thought it was just a habit, or those working dinners of hers. She'd come home late, smelling of perfume, and I didn't even ask. I thought she was building a career." "Wait, phone face down," Trevor frowned. "My ex did that when she was texting that bartender." "Classic." "Yeah," Ethan smiled bitterly. "And then there's the expenses. I saw the statements a couple of times: hotels, restaurants. She said it was for clients. I didn't dig around. Why? I trusted her." "Damn." Trevor finished his whiskey and poured himself another. "It's not just cheating, it's like she was leading a second life. Do you even know who this Brian is?" "I have no idea," Ethan shrugged. "She said he was married. Mentioned his wife, so he's not just some random dude. But I don't know him. Maybe someone she works with." "We need to find out." Trevor pulled out his phone and opened the browser. "Come on, tell me what else you know. Maybe we can Google it." "What's there on Google?" Ethan shook his head. "I heard her bragging about him coming over to our house. On our couch, Trev. Where I sit, where we," he trailed off. "I can't even say it properly." "Okay, no need." Trevor put the phone down. "Look, you need to decide what to do now. Do you want to talk to her? Right now?" "No," Ethan said sharply. "I can't see her. Not now. If I go back, I'll either scream or, I don't know." I don't want to be the guy who makes a scene. And you don't have to, Trevor nodded. You did the right thing by leaving, but you need a plan. If this is true, and I believe you, then this isn't just a fight, it's a scam. Divorce, Ethan said the word slowly, as if tasting it. I hadn't even thought about it. I mean, I had, but shit, we've been together for 9 years. We have a house, a cat, and plans for a baby. I know, Trevor sighed. But brother, she betrayed you. Not once, not twice, but for 2 years. This is not an accident. You need to protect yourself. Ethan nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He remembered Melanie hugging him that morning, smiling when he brought her coffee, planning a girls' night out, knowing she would laugh at it with her friends. He felt sick. Let me look for lawyers. Trevor picked up the phone again. There are a lot of divorce lawyers in Denver. We need to find someone who knows their stuff, so you don't end up empty-handed. Wait, Ethan raised his hand. I'm not ready yet. I don't even know what I feel. Anger, yes. But also, I don't know, some kind of emptiness. It's normal. Trevor put the phone down. You need to clear your head. Do you want me to turn on the match? Or let's start some games. It'll distract you. I don't want to, Ethan shook his head. I can't just sit here and pretend everything's okay. I have to do something, but I don't know what. Then let's just talk. Trevor poured himself another glass of whiskey. Tell me what else she said. Maybe it will help us figure this out. Ethan began to recount the story, pacing the living room. He remembered every word Melanie had said, how she had bragged about Vegas, how her friends had laughed, how Kate had called her a hero. Trevor listened, occasionally interjecting, damn, or that's shit. When Ethan finished, he sat down, feeling the fatigue creeping up on him. I just don't understand, he said. Why? If she doesn't need me, why not leave? Why is that? Because she's selfish, Trevor shrugged. She wants your house and his. What did she say? His soul. So she juggled you both. Ethan nodded, but Trevor's words were of no comfort. He glanced at his phone, no messages from Melanie. Usually she texted if he was late, but right now she was probably too busy with her friends, or Brian. There was a knock at the door and Ethan jumped. Trevor stood up. That must be Joe, he said. A neighbor. He promised to drop by to discuss a shipment of hops. I don't want anyone to know. Ethan looked at him. Please. No problem, Trevor nodded. Sit down, I'll be quick. He stepped into the hallway and Ethan heard voices. Joe, a man in his 50s, was a supplier for Trevor's brewery. His loud voice filled the house. Trev, I found this guy from Oregon, Joe began, walking into the living room. He's willing to sell hops for $5 a pound, but you have to buy a ton at a time. Joe, a stocky man with a graying beard, stopped when he noticed Ethan. Oh, Ethan, hi, he smiled. Didn't know you were here. How are you? Fine, Ethan forced a smile. Just stopping by to see Trevor. Cool, Joe plopped down in his chair, oblivious to the tension. I heard your wife is a marketing star. My daughter recently liked her Instagram post. Something about advertising for some brand. Yeah, Ethan nodded, feeling his throat tighten. She's trying. That's cool, Joe turned to Trevor. So what about the hops? Should we get some? Let's discuss it tomorrow. Trevor clearly wanted to send him away. I'll call you, okay? Okay, Joe stood up. Ethan, if you're ever at the brewery, come by. We have a new stout you'll like. Of course, Ethan nodded, and Joe left, slamming the door. Trevor returned to the sofa. Sorry, he said. Joe's like a tank, you can't shut him up. It's fine, Ethan took a sip of whiskey. It's just weird. Everyone thinks Melanie and I have this perfect life, and I'm sitting here not knowing how to live my life. You'll figure it out. Trevor looked at him. But now you need to sleep. The morning is wiser than the evening. I'll make you a bed on the couch. Ethan nodded, although he didn't feel like sleeping. He felt broken, but he had made his decision. He would not go home and tell Melanie that he knew the truth. Not until he figured out what to do. Trevor brought a blanket and pillow, and Ethan lay down, staring at the ceiling. The noise of the television Trevor had left playing in the background did nothing to drown out the thoughts of betrayal. Ethan Wilson woke up on the couch in Trevor Lynch's living room at 6:45 a.m. on Sunday morning. His neck was stiff and his mouth tasted of the whiskey they'd shared the night before. The television blared sports news, and an empty bottle of IPA and two glasses sat on the coffee table nearby. Ethan lay staring at the ceiling until the events of the previous night washed over him again. Melanie, his wife of 9 years, bragging to her friends that she'd been cheating on him for 2 years with Brian Crow. Her words Ethan has no idea. He's predictable, burned like acid. He'd fled the house, unable to face her, and spent the night at Trevor's, spilling everything. Now, in the quiet of the morning, he felt empty, but anger was beginning to replace the shock. Ethan sat up, rubbing his eyes. Trevor was snoring in his bedroom, and the house was silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. He checked his phone. No texts, no calls from Melanie. She usually texted if he was out all night, but apparently her bachelorette party with Lisa, Amber, and Kate had gone on too long. Ethan stood, folded the blanket, and wrote Trevor a note, heading home. "We'll call later. Thanks." He walked out, closing the door carefully, and got into the Jeep Cherokee that Trevor had driven from Walmart to his house the night before. Denver was quiet this morning. Ethan stopped at the corner coffee shop, the same one where he'd gotten Melanie's latte the day before. Sophie, the barista, was on shift, her bright pink hair sticking out from under her cap. "Ethan, are you here again?" She smiled, wiping down the counter. "Can't sleep." "Yeah," Ethan forced a smile. "Give me a black coffee and maybe a donut." "With or without the frosting?" Sophie turned to the display case. "With icing," he shrugged. "If we're going to live, we'll live." "It's the mood," she giggled, putting the donut in the bag. "How's Melanie? She came by yesterday for coffee before her bachelorette party. Said it would be fun." Ethan felt his throat tighten, but he nodded. "Yes, she had fun," he said, taking his coffee. "Thank you, Sophie." "Come back again," she shouted as he left. In the car, Ethan took a sip of coffee, but he couldn't taste it. He thought about going home and pretending he didn't know. Trevor had said yesterday that it was best to keep his mouth shut until Ethan figured out what to do. Divorce seems inevitable, but Ethan decided he'd gather evidence first, something to protect himself if it went to court. He didn't know where to start, but the idea of keeping Melanie in the dark gave him a strange sense of control. By 7:30, he was parked in the garage of their house in Stapleton. Lisa and Amber's cars were gone from the curb, but the patio light was still on. Ethan walked through the side door into the kitchen. 3 empty wine bottles, glasses with dried lipstick stains, and a plate of chipped crumbs littered the counter. The smell of alcohol hung in the air. Ethan set his coffee on the counter and started cleaning, just to keep his hands busy. He threw the bottles in the trash and loaded the glasses into the dishwasher. "Ethan," Melanie's voice came from above. She came down the stairs in her pajamas, her brown hair disheveled. Her eyes were red, her face pale. "When did you get back?" "Just now," Ethan turned, wiping his hands on a towel. He forced a smile. "I decided to stop by to get the car and go home. How are you?" "It's awful." Melanie plopped down on a chair at the kitchen island, rubbing her temples. "The girls drank too much last night. I must have drunk a whole bottle of wine. My head is splitting." "I see." Ethan nodded at the empty bottles in the trash. "Was it fun?" "Well, it depends," she shrugged, taking his coffee and taking a sip. "It was okay at first. We chatted and laughed. Then Lisa started whining about her boss, and Kate started whining about her ex again. I barely got them to leave by 2 in the morning." Ethan looked at her, feeling his insides tighten. She sat there complaining about her hangover, as if she hadn't laughed at him with her friends the day before, bragging about Brian. He remembered her words, "Ethan doesn't even know." But he nodded, hiding the pain. "Sounds like a typical bachelorette party," he said, opening the refrigerator. Want some eggs? Oh, you're a saint, Melanie smiled, and Ethan felt her smile cut through him. Yes, with bacon, if you have it. Yes, he said, taking out the eggs and bacon, setting the pan on the stove. Each word she said, "You're a saint," was a mockery. He remembered her saying yesterday that he had brought her coffee in bed after her night with Brian. But he kept cooking, trying to breathe evenly. "Where did you stay last night?" Melanie asked, scrolling through her phone. "At Trevor's?" "Yeah," Ethan cracked the eggs into a bowl. "When I found out the fishing was off, I went to see him. We drank too much, decided not to risk driving." "Smart," she nodded, not looking up from the screen. "Otherwise, I would have strangled you if you had been in an accident." "Yeah," Ethan chuckled, flipping the bacon. Her concern sounded so genuine, he almost believed it. But then he remembered her laugh, "He trusts me 100%, and his jaw clenched. Taco the cat jumped up on the counter and Melanie scratched him behind the ear. "That asshole stole a piece of cheese from the table yesterday," she said. "Can you imagine?" Classic Taco. Ethan set a plate of bacon and eggs in front of her. "Eat it while it's hot." "Thank you, honey." Melanie leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. "I love you." Ethan froze, feeling her words pierce him. He forced himself to smile. "And you," he said, turning to the sink to wash the frying pan. His hands were shaking, but he kept his composure. He couldn't let on that he knew the truth. Not now. The doorbell rang and Melanie sighed. "It must be Lisa," she said. "She promised to come get her bag. She forgot it yesterday." "I'll open it." Ethan wiped his hands and walked to the door. Lisa stood there, wearing sweatpants and with her ponytail wild. Her eyes were as red as Melanie's. "Hey, Ethan," Lisa smiled, but looked awkward. "I didn't realize you were home. Melanie said you were fishing." "Cancelled," Ethan shrugged, letting her through. "Trevor's car broke down." "It's a pity," Lisa entered, looking around. "Where's Melanie?" "In the kitchen," Ethan nodded to the side. He looked at Lisa, remembering how she'd laughed yesterday when Melanie had told him about Brian. He wanted to ask her how she could keep quiet, but he just smiled. "Want some coffee?" "No, thanks," Lisa waved her hand. "I'll be back in 5 minutes. Where's my bag?" Melanie came out of the kitchen munching on scrambled eggs. "Liz, are you alive?" She giggled. "The bag is in the living room on the couch. Taco, by the way, lay down on it, so get ready for fur." "Oh, that cat!" Lisa rolled her eyes as she headed into the living room. "I came home covered in cheese crumbles yesterday anyway." Ethan watched them chat as if nothing had happened. Lisa found her bag, brushed Taco's fur off it, and turned to Melanie. "Well, I'm off," she said. "I need to take a shower and sleep. Call me if anything happens." "Yeah," Melanie hugged her. "Thanks for stopping by." Lisa left and Melanie returned to her plate. "She looks worse than me," she said, finishing her bacon. "What are you doing today?" "I don't know," Ethan shrugged, putting the frying pan away. "Maybe I'll go to the gym, or just lie around. What about you?" "I want to die on the couch," Melanie yawned. "Then I'll clean up this mess. The girls came through like a tornado yesterday." "I see," Ethan said, nodding toward the bottles in the trash. He thought each one was part of her lie, but he didn't say anything, just got out a rag and started wiping down the counter. The kitchen window looked out onto the street, and Ethan noticed his neighbor, Mr. Rogers, walking his Labrador. The man, about 60, wearing a bright green windbreaker, waved at him. Ethan waved back, though he couldn't bring himself to smile. "Rogers is back in his neon getup," Melanie chuckled, looking out the window. "Remember when he dressed up as a pumpkin for Halloween? I nearly died laughing." "Yeah," Ethan nodded without turning around. He remembered how he and Melanie had handed out candy to the kids, laughed, and taken pictures with the neighbors. That had been less than a year ago, and she had already been with Brian. Melanie finished her coffee and stood up. "I'm going to take a shower," she said. "If you want, we can order something. Lunch." Sushi, maybe? Sounds good, Ethan nodded, although he didn't feel like eating. His stomach felt like it was in a knot. After Melanie went upstairs, Ethan sat at the kitchen island and pulled out his phone. He opened his browser and typed in how to gather evidence of infidelity. Dozens of articles and forums popped up, checking phones, monitoring finances, recording conversations. He flipped through a few pages, feeling like a spy in a bad movie. But the idea that he could protect himself was at least a small relief. He decided to start small, checking their bank statements when Melanie wasn't around. The sound of running water from the bathroom upstairs made Ethan stand up. He walked into the living room, where Taco was asleep on a pillow. The cheese plate and chip crumbs were still on the table. Ethan started cleaning up, just to keep himself busy. He knew he had to pretend to be normal until he could come up with a plan. But every word Melanie said, every look she gave him, was cutting into him, and he wasn't sure how much more he could take. Ethan Wilson stood in the kitchen of his home in Stapleton, a suburb of Denver, wiping down the counters, though they were already shiny. It was 10:30 am on a Sunday, and the sound of running water from the upstairs bathroom meant that Melanie, his wife, was showering. Only 24 hours earlier, he'd discovered that she'd been cheating on him for 2 years with Brian Crow, bragging to her friends on their deck. Her words, "Ethan has no idea, he's predictable," still echoed in his head. He'd come home that morning, pretending to spend the night at Trevor's because of a canceled fishing trip and one too many beers. Melanie, unsuspectingly, complained about her hangover and the mess of her bachelorette party, and Ethan, hiding his pain, cooked her eggs and nodded at her every "I love you." Now that she was upstairs, he decided to make his move. That night at Trevor's, he scrolled through divorce forums and realized he needed evidence to defend himself if it went to court. Ethan put the rag down and looked at Melanie's phone, lying on the kitchen island. She'd left it behind when she went to shower, a rare occurrence. She usually had it with her. The screen was dark, but Ethan knew the password, 0715, their wedding anniversary. He picked up the phone, his palms sweating. It was a first step, and it felt wrong, but he remembered her laugh, her lies, and his resolve prevailed. He typed in the password, and the screen lit up. The home screen was filled with app icons: Instagram, email, WhatsApp. Ethan opened WhatsApp, where Melanie usually texted her friends. He scrolled through the chats. Lisa, Amber, the girls' group. At the very top was a chat with a contact named B. Crow. Ethan clicked it, and his stomach clenched. The messages stretched back months, hundreds, maybe thousands. The latest was from last night, 11:47. "Where are you? The girls are drunk, I miss you." Brian's response: "At home, Sarah's asleep. See you tomorrow." Ethan scrolled up. The messages were explicit. Melanie telling him how she wanted to see him, Brian responding with details that made Ethan feel sick. There were photos Melanie in lingerie Ethan had never seen, and selfies of Brian, a man with short dark hair and a smirk. Ethan didn't know him, but the face was now etched in his memory. He found plans for meetings. Free Wednesday after 7, hotel on Broadway, same as usual. Ethan began taking screenshots, his fingers shaking. He emailed them to himself, using his phone, which was lying nearby. Each message was a blow, but he kept going. "Hey, Ethan, are you home?" A voice called from outside. Ethan jumped, almost dropping Melanie's phone. It was Mr. Rogers, the neighbor he had seen that morning. Ethan quickly locked the phone and put it back. "Yep, right there," he shouted, going to the window. Mr. Rogers, in his green windbreaker, was standing by the fence with a Labrador on a leash. "Are you busy?" The neighbor smiled. "I want to show you the lawn mower. I bought a new one, a beast of a machine. Maybe you'll find it useful." Ethan forced himself to smile, even though his heart was pounding. "I can't right now," he said. "Melanie's in the shower. I'm keeping an eye on her. Maybe later?" "No problem," Rogers waved his hand. "Come by after lunch if you need anything." "Buddy, let's go." He tugged the Labrador, and it happily trotted after him. Ethan went back to Melanie's phone, checking to see if she was going down. The sound of the water was still there, so he continued. He found the messages about Vegas. "You looked hot in that dress," Brian wrote. Melanie responded with a smiley face and a photo of a cocktail. Ethan remembered her coming back from that conference, hugging him, telling him she was tired. He took a dozen more screenshots, sent them to himself, and logged out of WhatsApp, making sure everything looked the same. He set Melanie's phone down on the counter and picked up his own. The email loaded, and he saw screenshots proof he'd never wanted to see. Ethan felt sick, but that was just the beginning. He remembered the advice from the forums. Check his finances. Their joint bank account was linked to an app on his phone. He opened it and began reviewing statements for the past 6 months. The list of transactions was long. Supermarkets, utilities, his gym. But some that stood out were unfamiliar. The Broadway Inn, $189 3 weeks ago. La Vista, $112 2 months ago. A lingerie store, $78 last month. Ethan had never been to the restaurant, and Melanie had never shown him her underwear. He took screenshots of the transactions, sending them to the same email address. Each discovery confirmed what Melanie had said on the terrace. She was living a double life using their money. Taco the cat jumped up on the counter, meowing, and Ethan scratched him behind the ear without looking up from his phone. "At least you won't betray me, right?" he muttered. Taco licked his hand and jumped off. Ethan heard the water stop running upstairs. He quickly logged out of the app and put his phone away. Melanie came down 5 minutes later in her robe, her hair wet. "Phew, I'll live," she said, opening the refrigerator. "Have you seen my yogurt? The one with strawberries?" In the door, Ethan nodded, standing at the sink. He was washing a mug, even though it was clean, just to keep his hands busy. "You're the best." Melanie pulled out a yogurt and sat at the island. "What are you doing? You look like you haven't slept." "I was sleeping," Ethan shrugged. "Just thinking about work. New project, lots of bugs." "Oh, you poor thing," she smiled, and Ethan felt her smile cut him. "Tell me, what's the project?" "It's boring," he waved his hand. "Code, tests, everything as usual." "And what about you? Has the hangover gone away?" "Almost." Melanie spooned yogurt. "I think I'll just lie around and watch a TV series. Those girls really got me last night. Amber was trying to sing karaoke at 3 in the morning again." Ethan nodded, remembering how Amber had laughed at his predictability. He wanted to ask what else they had talked about, but instead he said, "Sounds like fun. Want to order sushi for lunch?" "Oh, yeah," Melanie beamed. "And tuna rolls, you know the ones. I love you." "And I, you," Ethan answered automatically, turning back to the sink. Her words were like poison, but he kept his face straight. He knew he had to keep up the pretense until he could muster more. After breakfast, Melanie retreated to the living room, turning on Netflix. Ethan said he was going to the garage, ostensibly to unpack boxes. In reality, he wanted to take pictures of valuables in the house, as suggested on the forums. He started in the living room. The TV, the stereo, the painting they'd bought in Colorado Springs. He shot everything on his phone, trying not to let Melanie notice. When she called out, "Ethan, get me some water, please," he quickly put his phone away and grabbed a bottle from the refrigerator. "Here," he put the water on the table, watching her lie on the couch with Taco on her chest. "Thanks, honey," Melanie said, not even looking at him, too engrossed in her show. Ethan went back to the garage, where he continued taking photos. His tools, his ski gear, his old laptop. He didn't know why, but the forums had said, "Document everything that could be divided in a divorce." Around noon, the doorbell rang. Ethan opened it and saw Carol, the postman, a woman in her 40s with short hair and a perpetually tired look. "Hello, Ethan," she said, holding out a stack of letters. "These are for you," and the catalog Melanie ordered. "Thanks, Carol." Ethan took the mail. "How are you?" "As usual," she shrugged. "Delivery, dogs, rain, and what about you? I saw you had a party yesterday." "Yeah, Melanie and her friends," Ethan nodded, trying not to show his emotions. "Noisy, but fun." "I know these hen parties," Carol chuckled. My sister takes 3 days to recover from one of those. Okay, see you later. She left, and Ethan closed the door. Among the letters was an internet bill and a furniture catalog. He tossed them on the counter and returned to his plan. In the bedroom, he took pictures of their bed, their dresser, and Melanie's jewelry in a box. He didn't touch anything, just took pictures, feeling like a thief in his own home. For lunch, Ethan ordered sushi through an app. While Melanie ate the rolls and chatted about the show, he sat across from her, nodding and smiling. But inside, he was somewhere else, sorting through screenshots, notes, plans. He knew this was just the beginning, and every lie Melanie told him pushed him forward. Ethan Wilson sat in his Jeep Cherokee in the parking lot of Martha Gray, a divorce attorney in downtown Denver. It was Monday morning, and he'd taken the day off from work, lying about a doctor's appointment. It had been a week since he'd found out his wife of 2 years, Melanie, had been cheating on him with Brian Crow, bragging to her friends about it. Ethan had feigned ignorance, playing the role of a loving husband, but every day with Melanie was torture. Her smiles, her hugs, her "I love yous" cut him, and an icy anger grew inside him. Yesterday, he'd started collecting evidence. Screenshots of her text messages with Brian, photos of explicit messages, bank statements showing their hotel and restaurant expenses. Today, he wanted to figure out how to protect himself, and Trevor, his best friend, had Googled Martha Gray, best divorce attorney in Denver, 4.8 stars. Martha's office was on the 6th floor of a glass building. Ethan stepped into the elevator, adjusting his shirt. He felt out of place, as if he were walking into an exam he hadn't studied for. At the reception desk, he was met by his secretary, Linda, a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and bright lipstick. "Mr. Wilson," she smiled, peering over her glasses. "Martha is waiting for you. Would you like coffee or water?" "No, thank you," Ethan shook his head, sitting down on the leather couch. There were real estate magazines and a pamphlet on family law on the table. He picked one up but didn't read it, just flipped through it to keep his hands occupied. 5 minutes later, Linda led him into the office. Martha Gray, a woman in her 40s, wearing a formal blue suit, stood up from her desk. Her dark hair was pulled back into a bun, and her gaze was calm but piercing. "Ethan, it's good to see you." She extended her hand. "Have a seat. Tell me what brought you here." Ethan sat down, his throat dry. He started from the beginning, how he had come home early, how he had heard Melanie on the terrace bragging about cheating on him with Brian. Martha listened, taking notes on a yellow legal pad without interrupting. "I collected some stuff," Ethan finished, pulling out his phone. Screenshots of her text messages, bank statements, hotels, restaurants, linens, all on our dime. "Okay," Martha nodded, looking at the screen he showed her. "That's strong evidence. In Colorado, adultery can affect property division if you can prove she spent marital money on an affair. What do you want? Divorce? Alimony?" I don't know exactly." Ethan rubbed his temples. "I want to protect myself. The house, the savings, my pension, and I don't want her to get away with it." "Got it," Martha said, putting her pen down. "1, keep documenting everything. Texts, calls, spending. Colorado allows one-way recording of conversations, so if she says something important, write it down. 2, protect your finances. Transfer half your savings to a personal account. It's legal, as long as you don't empty it out completely. Freeze joint credit cards, come up with a plausible reason, and don't tell her you know until we're ready." "She doesn't suspect anything," Ethan nodded. "I pretend everything is okay. But it's hard." "I believe you," Marta looked at him. "You're doing the right thing by keeping yourself in check. The more we have, the better your position. Send me everything you've collected, and I'll start preparing the documents." Ethan left the office half an hour later, with her business card and a to-do list in the notes on his phone. He got in his car and texted Trevor. "Saw lawyer. Need to wire money and freeze cards. Call." Trevor responded a minute later. "Call at 6. I'm at the brewery." At home, Melanie was in the living room, leafing through a furniture catalog. Taco the cat was asleep on the windowsill. Ethan walked in, trying to look casual. "Hi." He threw the keys on the counter. "How's your day?" "It's boring," Melanie yawned. "I think I'll order a new sofa. This one's old. How's your doctor?" "It's fine," Ethan lied, remembering his excuse about taking a day off. "Just tests, nothing serious. Want some coffee?" "Yeah, be nice," she smiled, and Ethan felt her smile piss him off. He turned on the coffee machine, thinking about how she'd hugged him yesterday, talking about her plans for a baby. Lie after lie. While the coffee brewed, Ethan opened his laptop and logged into their bank account. The joint account held $4,300, their savings for renovations and future plans. He opened the website for his personal account, which he rarely used, and transferred $2,150. The process took a minute, but Ethan checked every number, afraid to make a mistake. When the transfer was confirmed, he exhaled. Half was safe. The next step was credit cards. They had two joint ones, Visa and MasterCard. Ethan went into the bank's app and selected the freeze card option, indicating the reason as suspicious activity. He knew Melanie would notice, but Martha advised him to make up a story. Ethan decided to say that the bank itself had frozen the cards due to fraud. Melanie walked into the kitchen holding the phone. "Did you order sushi?" she asked, taking her coffee. "I'm starving." "Not yet." Ethan closed his laptop. "Let's order. What do you want?" "Tuna rolls and California rolls." She sat down at the island. "And listen, I was thinking, maybe we should start planning a baby. Well, not tomorrow, but in a year." Ethan froze, holding the phone. Her words were like a blow. He remembered her bragging about Brian on their couch, and now talking about the baby. But he nodded. "That sounds serious," he said. "Let's discuss it later." "Okay," Melanie shrugged, scrolling through Instagram. "I just think we're ready." Ethan ordered sushi, trying not to look at her. Her lies made every moment unbearable, but he played his part. After lunch, Melanie went to the office, saying she had a presentation to prepare. Ethan was left alone and began working on the nuclear file, as Trevor called it. He opened his laptop and created a password-protected folder. Into it, he dumped screenshots of Melanie's text messages with Brian, bank statements, and photos of things around the house. Then he pulled out his recorder, an old one he used for work notes, and tested it to see if it worked. Colorado allowed recording conversations without consent, and Ethan decided to use it. He turned on the recorder and put it in his pocket when Melanie returned that evening. "Phew, this is a terrible day." Melanie threw her bag on the couch and collapsed next to Taco. "The client is redoing everything again. How are you?" "Fine." Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop. "Wrote the code. Want some wine?" "Oh, yes," she smiled. "You read my mind." Ethan poured her a drink, turning on the recorder in his pocket. Melanie chatted about work, but said nothing important. He listened, nodding, and thought of her holding him, knowing she was sleeping with someone else. When she went to bed, he turned off the recorder and checked the recording clean, but empty. He decided to try again. That evening, he called Trevor, who was in his brewery, judging by the noise in the background. "So, how are you?" Trevor spoke loudly, shouting over the sound of the glass. "Did the lawyer help?" "Yes." Ethan sat in the garage so Melanie wouldn't hear. "She said to gather evidence and protect the money. I transferred half the savings and froze the cards." "Well done," Trevor chuckled. "Did Melanie notice?" "Not yet." Ethan looked at the door. "But he will soon. I told you the bank blocked them because of fraud." "Clever," Trevor laughed. "Listen, I was thinking. Let me help you with your file. I have an external drive, encrypted. Bring what you collected, I'll organize it." "Really?" Ethan felt relieved. "That would be cool. I already have a bunch of screenshots, extracts, and photos." "Bring it tomorrow," Trevor paused. "And brother, hang in there. You're doing fine." "I try," Ethan sighed. "But living with her, it's hell." I understand, Trevor lowered his voice. Just don't lose your temper. She's not worth your nerves. Ethan hung up and went back into the house. Melanie was asleep, and he lay down next to her, careful not to touch her. Her breathing was regular, and his thoughts were chaotic. He stared at the ceiling, going over the plan: evidence, finances, divorce. The next day, Melanie called from work, her voice irritated. "Ethan, what the hell is wrong with the card?" she nearly screamed. "I tried to buy coffee, and it didn't work. It's that Visa." "Oh shit," Ethan feigned surprise, but inside he was jubilant. "I called the bank. They said there was suspicious activity. They froze both cards. They'll send new ones in a week." "Seriously?" Melanie snorted. "This is so embarrassing. I looked like an idiot at the checkout." "Sorry," Ethan shrugged, though she couldn't see. "You can get some cash from the drawer. There's a couple hundred in there." "Okay," she sighed. "But this sucks. Call the bank back and sort it out." "Already," he lied. "They're working on it." When she hung up, Ethan allowed himself a grim smile. Her irritation was a small victory. He opened his laptop and added a new note to the nuclear file. Cards frozen, Melanie noticed. Trevor was right, he was getting there, one step at a time. In the evening, Mrs. Carter, a neighbor, came to see them with a plate of homemade cookies. "Ethan, Melanie, help yourself," she smiled, setting the plate on the counter. "I baked for the grandchildren, but there are too many of them." "Thank you, Mrs. Carter." Ethan took the cookie. "You spoil us." "Oh, never mind." She waved her hand. "Melanie, how was your hen party? I saw the cars at your place on Saturday." "It's fun, but noisy." Melanie walked out of the living room, smiling. "Now I'm getting some sleep." "Young people," Mrs. Carter giggled. "Okay, I won't interrupt. Ethan, if you need a lawn mower, Rogers has a new one. He's bragging about it." "I heard." Ethan nodded. "Thank you." When she left, Melanie took the cookie and hugged Ethan. "You're the best husband, you know that," she said. "Thank you for putting up with my parties." Ethan Wilson sat at his desk in downtown Denver, staring at the screen but not seeing the lines of code. It had been 2 weeks since he'd found out his wife, Melanie, was cheating on him with Brian Crow, bragging to her friends. Her words Ethan doesn't suspect, he's predictable, still echoed in his head. Ethan had collected evidence, screenshots of text messages, bank statements, phone records. He'd transferred half of his savings to a personal account, frozen his credit cards, and consulted with attorney Martha Gray. At home, he'd played the loving husband, even though every "I love you" from Melanie had been a blow. But now he realized it wasn't just about finances or divorce. Melanie valued her reputation, the perfect wife, the Instagram star, the respected woman in her circle. If the truth came out, she would lose everything. Ethan decided to hedge his bets by sowing doubt among his friends so that she would not be able to portray him as the villain when he exposed her. Ethan closed his laptop and checked his watch. 4:45 p.m. Friday. He'd arranged to meet a mutual friend, Jake, at a bar after work. Jake and his wife, Sarah, were part of his and Melanie's circle, not close friends, but people they saw at parties and barbecues. Ethan had chosen Jake because he was talkative and had a way with keeping his mouth shut. A perfect conduit for gossip. "Hey, Wilson, are you leaving already?" Jenna Martin, a fellow tester, leaned back in her chair, chewing gum. Her bright green headphones lay on the table. "Or are you finishing up the code again?" "I'm going," Ethan smiled, packing his backpack. "I'm meeting a friend." "What, are you out there catching bugs until night?" "Yeah, dream on," Jenna chuckled. "I have a date. New guy from Tinder. Says he's vegan, but I ordered a pepperoni pizza. Let's see if he holds up." "Cruel," Ethan laughed, though his thoughts were far away. "Good luck not scaring him off." "He'll scare me off if he starts talking about smoothies." Jenna rolled her eyes. "Okay, go ahead. Say hi to Melanie." "Yeah," Ethan nodded, feeling the mention of Melanie's scratch. He walked out of the office, down to the parking lot, and got into his Jeep Cherokee. The rusty tap, where he'd arranged to meet Jake, was 10 minutes away. An old Red Hot Chili Peppers track was playing on the radio, but Ethan turned it off. The silence helped him think. The bar was noisy. It was a Friday night. People were unwinding after a hard week. Ethan found Jake at a table by the window. Jake, 37, a sales manager with a short beard and permanently squinted eyes, was already drinking a beer. A plate of nachos sat nearby. Ethan, bro. Jake raised the bottle as Ethan approached. Thought you'd be late. Sit down. Get a beer. Hey, Ethan sat down, waving at the waitress. How are you? The usual, Jake shrugged. Work, Sarah, the kids. My youngest spilled juice on the carpet yesterday. I almost went gray. How are you? Is Melanie still an Insta star? Ethan nodded, trying to look relaxed. The waitress, Clara, a girl in her mid-20s with a rose tattoo on her wrist, came over to the table. What do you want? She asked, chewing gum. IPA, any kind. Ethan glanced at the menu. And wings, spicy. Got it, Clara wrote down and left. Ethan turned to Jake, setting the stage. Melanie, yes, she keeps taking down her posts, he said, taking a sip of the water that was on the table. But lately, I don't know, it's like she's been pulling away. Jake raised his eyebrows as he put the bottle down. Moving away, he leaned closer. What do you mean? You seem like the perfect couple. All those photos with the hashtags love forever. Well, Ethan shrugged, looking down at the table. The surface is one thing, and reality is another. She works a lot, comes home late. Sometimes it seems like I talk to the cat more than I do to her. Oh man, Jake chuckled, taking a bite of his nachos. Sounds familiar. Sarah's in her own world, too, especially when her friends start partying. Lisa, Amber, Melanie, they're like a gang, right? Yeah, Ethan nodded, remembering how the gang had laughed at him. It's just, marriage feels empty sometimes. I don't know how to explain it. Maybe I'm being picky. No, you're not picking on me, Jake shook his head. Sarah and I had this happen a couple of years ago. She's always with her friends, I'm with the kids. You feel like furniture. Have you talked to her? I tried, Ethan lied. But she brushes it off, says I'm being dramatic. Classic. Jake finished his beer and waved to Clara for another. Listen, try to get her out somewhere. Dinner, a movie. Sarah comes alive when I throw her out of the house. Maybe, Ethan nodded, even though he knew romance with Melanie was impossible. Clara brought his beer and wings, and he took a sip to buy himself time. Sometimes I wonder if marriage isn't what we thought it was. Jake looked at him, chewing on his nachos. Hey, don't get worked up, he said. You and Melanie are tough. But if anything happens, speak up. Sarah and I are always there for you. Maybe we can have a barbecue next week. We'll hang out and shake things up. Sounds good, Ethan smiled, knowing there would be no barbecue. His words had already done their job. Jake would tell Sarah, Sarah would tell her friends, and doubts would begin to spread. They chatted for another hour about work, football, and Jake's new truck. Ethan nodded, joked, but thought about Melanie. Her Instagram was full of posts. Her and Ethan on a picnic, her with coffee and the hashtag living the dream. All lies. He wanted the truth to destroy her facade, but so far he was only sowing seeds. When Ethan got home around 8 p.m., he found Melanie in the living room. She was sitting on the couch with her laptop, her cat Taco asleep next to her. On the screen was her Instagram, a new post, a photo of her morning coffee with the caption, "Starting the day with love." Hi, honey, Melanie smiled, closing her laptop. Where have you been? With Jake, Ethan tossed his keys on the counter. Beer, chat. He's inviting us to a barbecue. Oh, cool, she stood up and hugged him. Sarah called, she talked about it too. I'm in. Are you hungry? There's pizza in the fridge. Nah, I ate, Ethan pulled away, as if to get water. Her embrace was unbearable. How are you? Work? Horrible, Melanie sighed, sitting back down. The client is redoing the presentation again. And you? Still writing code? Yeah, Ethan nodded, opening the fridge. Bugs, deadlines, the usual. He went into the garage, ostensibly to check his tools, but in reality he texted Trevor. Spoke to Jake. Said Melanie is drifting away. He swallowed. Trevor replied, "Nice. Stop by tomorrow and discuss the file." The next day, Ethan continued the strategy. At the gym, he met Mike, a trainer who knew him and Melanie through mutual friends. While Mike was spotting him on the bench, Ethan struck up a conversation. "Listen, Mike," he said, wiping away the sweat. "You've been married, haven't you? How do you know when a marriage, well, isn't working?" Mike, a big guy in his 40s with an eagle tattoo on his shoulder, lifted the barbell. "Oh, that's a profound question," he chuckled. "Is there something wrong with you and Melanie?" "I don't know," Ethan shrugged, sitting down on the bench. "She's kind of the same, but she's distant. She works a lot, comes home late. Sometimes it feels like we're just neighbors." "It happens," Mike nodded, adjusting his gloves. "It happened to me with my ex. She was always busy, and then it turned out she had someone else. Have you talked to her?" "I tried," Ethan lied. "She says I'm exaggerating." "Come on, don't push it." Mike patted him on the shoulder. "Try romance. Dinner, flowers. Melanie seems normal, not the type to waste time on nonsense." "Maybe," Ethan nodded, knowing Mike would tell someone in the room. Another seed planted. That evening, Ethan went for a beer with a colleague, Paul, a sysadmin. At the pub, while Paul was complaining about the new server, Ethan interjected. "You know, things aren't all roses at home either. Melanie is always busy with her own affairs. Sometimes I wonder, what does marriage give you anyway?" "Oh man," Paul put his mug down. "My brother got divorced because of this. His wife was always working, and he was a loser. You check if she's hanging out somewhere. Phone bills." "No," Ethan shook his head. "She's not like that. She's just empty." "I understand," Paul nodded. "If anything, call me, let's hang out. It's better without wives." Ethan smiled, knowing that Paul would spill the beans to others in the office. By the end of the week, he had spoken to 5 people he knew, each time dropping a line about an empty marriage or Melanie is drifting away. No one suspected he knew the truth, but rumors began to spread. At home, Melanie acted as if nothing had happened. On Thursday, she cooked dinner pasta with shrimp and chatted about the new coffee machine. "Look at this one I found." She showed a photo on her phone. 500, but it froths the milk itself. "Should we buy it?" "It's a bit pricey," Ethan shrugged, chopping the salad. "Maybe we should wait." "Oh, you're always so practical." Melanie rolled her eyes, but smiled. "I love you for that." "And I love you," Ethan said, the words catching in his throat. He watched her set the plates down and thought about her Instagram posts. The perfect couple, my husband the best. All lies, but soon her mask would come off. On Friday evening, Mrs. Carter, a neighbor, came to see them with a jar of homemade jam. "Ethan, Melanie, this is for you." She put the jar on the counter. "Strawberry, fresh. How are you here? Still working?" "Yeah," Melanie smiled, wiping her hands. "I'm getting ready for a presentation. Ethan is coding. Life is in full swing." "Well done," Mrs. Carter nodded. "I saw your post, Melanie, with the coffee. You take beautiful pictures." "Thank you," Melanie beamed. "I'm trying." When the neighbor left, Ethan looked at Melanie, knowing that her reputation was her weakness. He was sowing doubts, and soon they would grow. He was willing to wait. Ethan Wilson woke up at 6:30 a.m. on Friday, lying next to Melanie in their bedroom in the Denver suburb of Stapleton. He had been a shadow of his former self for the past 3 weeks, hiding the anger and hurt he felt after discovering Melanie had been cheating on him for 2 years with Brian Crow. Her words on the patio, "Ethan doesn't suspect. He's predictable," had become his fuel. He had built a nuclear file of evidence. Screenshots of text messages, hotel and linen statements, recordings of phone calls. He had transferred half his savings to a personal account, frozen his credit cards, consulted with attorney Martha Gray. He had subtly planted doubts among his friends, hinting that Melanie was pulling away. Today was the day he had chosen to strike. Melanie's presentation to key clients, her career triumph. Ethan planned to send the evidence to Brian's wife, Sarah, and destroy Melanie's world. He got up quietly, so as not to wake Melanie, and went down to the kitchen. Taco the cat meowed for food, and Ethan poured it out for him. While the coffee brewed, he checked the evidence package he'd prepared the day before. A USB drive containing correspondence, photos, transcripts, and a printed selection of key screenshots. It was all in an envelope addressed to Sarah Crow. Ethan had found her address on LinkedIn and hired a courier to deliver the package at 11 a.m. He knew it would upend her life, but Sarah deserved the truth. Melanie came down at 7:15, wearing a black dress and shoes, her brown hair perfectly coiffed. She looked confident but nervous. Morning, she kissed Ethan on the cheek as she took her coffee. Big day today. If this presentation goes well, I could get a promotion. You'll get through this, Ethan smiled, though he was cold inside. You're always a star. Thank you, honey, Melanie smiled, adjusting her earrings. Too bad you won't see it. The clients are a pain, but I'll get them. I'm sure, Ethan said, pushing the avocado toast he'd made her. Good luck. Call me and let me know how it went. Of course, she took the toast and her bag. I love you. And you, Ethan replied, watching her leave. Her words were empty, but he played his part perfectly. As soon as the door closed, he sat down at the kitchen island and checked his phone. The delivery guy confirmed he had picked up the package and would deliver it by 11. Ethan exhaled, feeling the adrenaline rush through his heart. He went to the office to take his mind off things. At 9 a.m., he was sitting at his desk, pretending to work on code. Jenna Martin, a fellow tester, peered through the partition. Ethan, why are you so pale? She chewed an apple. Have you been coding all night again? No, I just didn't get enough sleep, Ethan shrugged. Melanie has a big presentation today. I'm worried about her. Oh, she's your marketing goddess, Jenna chuckled. She'll tell her clients a few fairy tales, and they'll carry her around in their arms. I hope so, Ethan smiled, though his thoughts were on Sarah and the bag. He checked the time, 9:45. Another hour. At 10 a.m., Paul, the system administrator, walked into the office with a mug of coffee and a donut. Wilson, did you hear that? Paul plopped down on the chair next to him. Our server is down again. I told you these updates are crap. Seriously, Ethan looked at him, glad for the distraction. What is it this time? As usual, Paul sighed. Someone entered a crooked config. I'll be poking around until night. And what about you? Is Melanie still distancing herself? He winked, hinting at their conversation in the pub. It's okay, Ethan waved his hand. It's just marriage, you know. It happens. Oh, I know, Paul chuckled. My sister got divorced last year. She says she's better off alone than with an asshole. If anything happens, invite her for a beer. Deal, Ethan nodded, looking at his watch. 10:30. Paul left, and Ethan opened his email, but he couldn't concentrate. He waited. At 11:05, his phone vibrated. A message from the courier. Package delivered. Recipient, Sarah Crow. Ethan closed his eyes, imagining Sarah opening the envelope. He knew there would be chaos, and he felt a grim satisfaction. By 11:30, his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but it was a Denver area code. Ethan stepped out into the hallway and answered. Hello, he said. Is that Ethan Wilson? The woman's voice was shaking, and you could tell she was crying. This is Sarah Crow. Ethan swallowed, his heart pounding. Yes, it's me, he replied. Did you receive the package? Yes, Sarah sobbed. I don't know what to say. Thank you for telling me. I thought I was going crazy. Brian's been telling me I was paranoid for years, and it's all true. I'm sorry, Ethan said quietly, even though the office was empty. I didn't mean to hurt you, but you had to know. No, you did the right thing, Sarah sniffed. I found his old messages from when you sent this. He's home now, screaming that Melanie seduced him, trying to get out of it. He's blaming her? Ethan frowned, though he had expected it. Yes, Sarah smiled bitterly. He says she was stalking him, and he couldn't refuse liar. I've already called a lawyer. Okay, Ethan nodded. If you need to talk, call. I'm in the same boat. Thank you, Sarah paused. I have to go. Brian is calling, but I don't want to talk to him. I understand, Ethan said. Hang in there. She hung up and Ethan returned to the table. His hands were shaking, but he felt like he had taken the first step. Brian was panicking, and this was just the beginning. At 12:15, Melanie called. Her voice was tense. Ethan, where are you? She spoke quickly. Something weird is going on. Sarah Crow called me, screamed that I was a loose woman, that I had ruined her marriage. Do you know what she meant? Ethan pretended to be surprised, although his heart was pounding. Sarah, Brian's wife? He asked. I have no idea. What did she say? She was talking nonsense, Melanie almost screamed. That I was having an affair with Brian, that she had proof. I was at a presentation, and she was calling me. I don't know what to do. Easy, Ethan said evenly. Maybe she made a mistake. Brian is your colleague, right? Yes, just a colleague. Melanie raised her voice. This is crazy. I left the presentation without finishing it. The boss is furious. I need to sort this out. Calm down, Ethan continued. Talk to her, find out. Or Brian, I'm home after work, we'll discuss it. Okay, Melanie sighed. I'll call you back. She hung up, and Ethan allowed himself a grim smile. Melanie's presentation, her moment of glory, had collapsed. He knew she was panicking, and that was his first blow. The day was dragging on at the office. Jenna came in with coffee, chatting about her vegan boyfriend. He actually ate the pizza, she giggled, sitting on the edge of his desk. But now he wants me to try his tofu. I'm out. You're mean, Ethan laughed, though his thoughts were on Melanie. Give the guy a chance. We'll see, Jenna shrugged. And what about you? Is Melanie the star today? Yeah, the presentation, Ethan nodded, hiding the truth. I hope it goes well. It'll pass, Jenna left, and Ethan checked his phone. Melanie had sent a message. Sarah isn't answering. Neither is Brian. I'm in agony. Ethan didn't answer. He just put his phone away. At 3 o'clock, a courier came in, a guy about 20 years old in a blue uniform with a box for half. Hey, this is for Paul Richards, he said, looking at his tablet. Where's his desk? Over there, Ethan pointed. It's in the server room now. Leave it on the table. Okay, the courier nodded. The weather is shitty. It's starting to rain. I don't envy myself. Hang in there, Ethan smiled, thinking of his courier delivering the package to Sarah. Little details that change lives. By the end of the day, Melanie texted again. I'm home. This is a nightmare. Can we talk? Ethan replied. I'll be there soon. He knew she was distraught, and that was exactly what he wanted. The presentation was a bust. Sarah knew the truth. Brian was in turmoil. Ethan got into the car, feeling his plan starting to work. Ethan Wilson sat at the small kitchen table in his new apartment in Boulder, Colorado, staring at his laptop. It was Saturday morning, exactly 1 day since he had dealt the final blow to Melanie's world of lies. Yesterday, on the day of her important client presentation, he had sent Sarah Crow, the wife of Melanie's lover, Brian, a packet of evidence of their 2-year affair. Screenshots of text messages, expense reports, explicit photos. Melanie's presentation had fallen apart when Sarah had started calling her, blaming her for the ruin of her marriage. Ethan feigned surprise, but inside he was jubilant. Today he was preparing for the next step, sending a letter to Melanie's parents to let them know the truth and handing her divorce papers. His nuclear file weeks of evidence of infidelity was complete, and he no longer wanted to pretend to be a loving husband. Ethan opened his email and began writing a letter. He addressed it to John and Elizabeth, Melanie's parents, who lived in suburban Fort Collins. He had always respected them. John, a former engineer, was forthright, and Elizabeth, a retired teacher, loved family dinners. Ethan didn't want to hurt their feelings, but Melanie wasn't supposed to control the story. The letter was short and unemotional. He laid out the facts: the 2 years of infidelity, the spending on Brian, the evidence on the USB attached to the letter. He ended with, "I respect you, and I don't want you to find out about this from anyone else. I'm sorry." Ethan enclosed the USB with a copy of the nuclear file and sent the letter via courier, scheduled to arrive by noon. He closed his laptop and looked at the boxes in the corner. The move to Boulder had been quick. He'd rented a small one-bedroom apartment, moving only the essentials: clothes, a laptop, a few books. Melanie would keep their house in Stapleton, but Ethan knew she couldn't afford the rent alone. His lawyer, Martha Gray, had prepared the divorce papers that lay on the table: clear, ruthless, citing infidelity and the squandering of the family's money. Ethan was waiting for Melanie at their old house to deliver them in person. At 10 a.m. he drove to Stapleton. The house was quiet. Taco the cat was asleep on the couch. Ethan walked through the rooms, checking to see if he had forgotten anything important. He had already collected his papers, the photo with his parents, and the old baseball. Everything else, the furniture, the dishes, their life together, felt foreign now. He sat in the living room, put the papers on the table, and waited. Melanie returned at 11:30, her heels clicking on the floor. She walked in, tossing her bag on the counter, and froze when she saw Ethan. Her face was pale, her eyes red, her makeup smeared. She looked like she hadn't slept. "You're home," she said, her voice shaking. "Why aren't you at work? We need to talk." "We must," Ethan nodded, sitting on the couch. His voice was even, although anger raged inside. "Sit down." Melanie sat down in the chair opposite, clutching her phone. "What have you done?" She raised her voice. "Sarah Crow ruined my life yesterday. She called and screamed that I was sleeping with her husband. My presentation failed. The boss was furious. And now Brian writes that you told her everything? How could you betray me?" Ethan looked at her, feeling her accusations slip past him. He had been waiting for this moment for weeks. "Betray?" He raised his eyebrows. "Interesting word. And what did you do for 2 years, Melanie?" She froze, her eyes widening. "What are you talking about?" She tried to smile, but it came out nervously. "Do you believe this nonsense? Sarah is crazy, and Brian. He's just a colleague." Ethan stood up, picked up the papers from the table, and handed them to her. "Stop lying," he said, his voice cold. "You called me naive, said I didn't suspect. Surprise." Melanie took the papers, her hands shaking. She glanced at the first page, "Application for divorce," and turned even paler. "What? What is this?" She looked at him. "Ethan, are you serious? A divorce? Because of some gossip?" "Not gossip." Ethan crossed his arms. "I know everything. 2 years with Brian. Vegas, hotels, our couch. I heard you bragging to Lisa, Amber, and Kate. I have the texts, the transcripts, the photos, everything." Melanie opened her mouth, but found no words. Her face contorted, and she threw the papers on the table. "Were you eavesdropping?" She jumped up, her voice breaking. "Were you spying on me? How dare you?" "How dare I?" Ethan raised his voice, but quickly pulled himself together. "You slept with someone else, spent our money, laughed at me, and I was supposed to keep quiet." "It's not like that." Melanie stepped toward him, her eyes filling with tears. "It was a mistake. Brian doesn't mean anything. I love you, Ethan. We can fix this." "Fix it?" He shook his head. "You called me furniture, said I was there for stability, and he was there for the soul. Enough, Melanie. I'm not naive." She fell back into the chair, covering her face with her hands. Tears were streaming down her cheeks, but Ethan felt no pity. He had been waiting for this moment, and now she saw him not broken, but ready. "I sent your parents a letter," he said. "With the facts. They need to know who their daughter is." Melanie looked up, her eyes wide with horror. "You, what?" she gasped. You told my parents? You're a monster. No, Ethan looked her in the eye. I gave them the truth. You can lie to me, but not to them. Melanie jumped up, grabbed her bag, and ran out of the house, slamming the door. Ethan sat down on the couch, feeling the tension release. He had done it. The plan had worked. He returned to Boulder by evening, but the news was already spreading. Trevor called at 7 p.m., his voice excited. Did you see that, brother? Trevor spoke from his brewery, glasses clinking in the background. Sarah Crow's telling everyone. Melanie and Brian are the main gossip. Lisa and Amber are silent, not even responding in chat. Okay, Ethan sat in his apartment, looking at the boxes. Let them run. They knew and laughed. Right, Trevor chuckled. Look, Sarah filed for divorce. Brian called some friend, screaming that his clients were screwing him. And Melanie. Her boss is furious about the presentation. She's in deep shit. She deserved it, Ethan said evenly, though he felt satisfaction inside. I'm not going home again. Let her sort it out. Cool, Trevor paused. Come over tomorrow. We'll have a beer. You're great. Deal. Ethan hung up and opened his laptop. He checked his email. John, Melanie's father, had responded briefly. Ethan, we are shocked. Thank you for your honesty. We will talk to her. Ethan closed the email, knowing that their disappointment would be another blow to Melanie. That evening, there was a knock on the door. Ethan opened it and saw Mrs. Carter, their neighbor from Stapleton, with a container of soup. She had come to Boulder, having learned his address through Trevor. Ethan, dear, she entered, setting the container on the table. Trevor said you moved. I brought you some soup, chicken. How are you? It's okay, Ethan smiled, touched by her concern. Thank you, Mrs. Carter. You shouldn't have. It was worth it, she shook her head. I heard you and Melanie were having problems. I don't want to butt in, but you're a good guy. If anything happens, call me. Thank you, Ethan nodded, walking her to the door. Her kindness reminded him that not everything in his life had fallen apart. The next day, Ethan learned from Jake, their mutual friend, that Lisa and Amber had stopped communicating with Melanie. Jake called while Ethan was unpacking boxes. Hey, Ethan, Jake said quickly. Hear what's going on. Melanie's avoiding everyone. Lisa told Sarah she doesn't want to get involved. Amber even went to stay with her sister. I'm not surprised, Ethan said, putting away books. They knew about Brian. Now they're afraid their names will come out. Yeah, Jake chuckled. Sarah's telling everyone. Brian's panicking, clients are running. And Melanie. She moved out of your house, they say, to some apartment in Arvada. Quickly, Ethan nodded, although he knew Melanie couldn't afford the rent of their house. Let her figure it out. Are you okay? Jake lowered his voice. This is brutal, bro. I'll get through this, Ethan said calmly. Thank you for telling me. Melanie called in the evening, her voice hoarse. Ethan, she sobbed. My parents, they know. They said they were disappointed. How could you? It's true, Melanie. Ethan sat on the couch, looking out the window. You deceived them, just like you deceived me. I didn't mean to, she cried. Please, let's talk. We can fix this. I love you. No, Ethan cut her off. You loved your lies. I filed for divorce. It's over. He hung up, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. Melanie had lost her friends, her reputation, her career. Her world was crumbling, and Ethan was starting a new one in Boulder without her shadows. Ethan Wilson parked his Jeep Cherokee outside the Bean and Brew coffee shop in downtown Boulder, Colorado. It was Saturday morning, and 8 months had passed since he'd learned that his wife, Melanie, had been cheating on him for 2 years with Brian Crow. Back then, after hearing her boast to her friends, Ethan doesn't suspect. He's predictable, he'd gathered evidence, filed for divorce, and destroyed her world by sending the truth to Sarah Crow and Melanie's parents. Now the divorce was final. Melanie had moved to Seattle, and Ethan was living in a new apartment in Boulder, rebuilding his life. He was hiking, learning to cook, and had recently started dating Rachel, a coworker who was patient with his caution. Today, he stopped by the coffee shop for a latte before heading out for a hike with friends. The coffee shop was cozy. Wooden tables, the smell of freshly ground beans, the hum of conversation. Ethan stood in line, scrolling through his phone. Ahead of him, a guy in a cycling uniform was ordering coffee, followed by a woman pushing a baby in a stroller. The barrister, Liam, a 20-something with a pierced eyebrow, nodded welcomingly. "Hey, Ethan, the usual," he asked, wiping down the counter. "Tall oat latte?" "Yeah," Ethan smiled. "And add some vanilla syrup. I'll be fine." "You only live once," Liam chuckled, starting to cook. "Are you heading to the mountains today? Saw your post from the trail last week. It looked cool." "Yeah, Bear Peak today," Ethan nodded, "if I don't die on the climb." "You'll die," Liam handed him the glass. "Just kidding. Good luck, man." Ethan picked up his coffee and turned to leave, but he paused. Melanie was sitting at a table by the window. She looked different, shorter hair, no makeup, a simple gray sweater and jeans. In front of her was a laptop and a cup of tea. She looked up and met his gaze. Her face was pale, but she smiled faintly. "Ethan," she said quietly. "Hello." Ethan felt his heart skip a beat, not from pain or anger, just surprise. He walked over to her table, holding the coffee. "Hello," he replied, sitting down opposite. "I didn't think I'd see you here." "Me too," Melanie nervously adjusted her hair. "I'm in Boulder for a couple of days. A friend's getting married. How are you?" "Fine," Ethan shrugged, looking at her. She looked more modest, without the self-confidence that was in her Instagram posts. "Work, hiking, life. What about you?" "I'm in Seattle," she said, looking into her cup. "I work as an administrator at a clinic. Nothing special, but the pay is okay. Trying to start over." Ethan nodded, unsure of what to say. He expected anger or hurt, but he felt neither. He simply sat across from the woman who had been his wife for 9 years and now seemed like a stranger. "Listen," Melanie looked up, her voice shaking. "I wanted to say, I'm so ashamed of everything. I ruined our marriage. I was selfish, I lied to you, I hurt you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I'm truly sorry." Ethan looked at her, expecting her words to cause something rage, pain, anything. But inside he was empty. He nodded. "Thank you for telling me," he replied. "I appreciate it. But it's in the past." "Yeah," she sniffled, wiping her eyes. "I just wanted you to know. I was seeing a therapist, trying to figure out why I did what I did. It's not an excuse, but I was lost." "I understand." Ethan took a sip of coffee. "I hope you find yourself." Melanie smiled weakly, her eyes shining. "You've changed," she said. "You look calmer, happier." "I try," Ethan shrugged. "Life goes on." They fell silent. At the next table, a guy in a cycling uniform was chatting on his phone. "Yeah, I got the tires, but they're expensive." A woman with a stroller was rocking a baby, humming softly. Liam was joking with a new customer, an old man in a baseball cap, behind the counter. "Are you seeing someone?" Melanie asked cautiously. "It's none of my business, but I'm just curious." "Yeah," Ethan nodded, thinking about Rachel. "Her name is Rachel. We work together. It's slow, but okay." "That's cool," Melanie nodded. "She's right for you. You deserve someone good." "Thanks." Ethan looked at his watch. "I have to go. Hiking with friends." "Sure." Melanie stood up, gathering her things. "It was weird, but good to see you. Good luck, Ethan." "And you too," he replied, standing up. "Good luck in Seattle." They walked out together, and Melanie walked to her car, an old Honda. Ethan watched her drive away and knew he was free. Her apology was sincere, but it meant nothing. He got into his Jeep and drove home, feeling lighter. Ethan had been furnishing his Boulder apartment one step at a time. It was small, a bedroom, a living room, a kitchen, but his. He'd bought a couch, hung shelves, hung photos from his hikes. The kitchen had a set of knives and pans. He'd signed up for a cooking class and was now making steaks and pasta, bragging to Trevor. That evening, after coffee, he met Trevor at his brewery, Lynch's Brew. The bar was packed. Students, a couple of bikers, a family with kids in the corner. Trevor, wearing his brewery t-shirt, was pouring beer behind the bar. "Yo, hiking hero," Trevor grinned, setting a pint of IPA in front of Ethan. "How's Bear Peak?" "Fine," Ethan sat down at the counter. "My legs are aching, but the views are worth it." "What, are you playing bartender again?" "Yeah," Trevor nodded. "My guy got sick, had to go out." "Listen, I brewed a new stout. Want to try it?" "Go ahead," Ethan smiled. "Just don't bully me." "You're being offensive." Trevor poured a stout and set it in front of him. "How's life? Does Rachel still put up with your jokes?" "For now, yes," Ethan chuckled, taking a sip. "She's normal. Doesn't push, doesn't rush. We cooked together yesterday and almost burned the kitchen down." "It's love," Trevor laughed. "Seriously, brother, you look better. Not like when." "Well, you know." "Yeah," Ethan nodded, thinking about Melanie. "I saw her today, by the way, at the coffee shop." Trevor froze, holding the rag. "Melanie?" He lowered his voice. "So what? No fight?" "No," Ethan shrugged. "She apologized. Said she was sorry. Works in Seattle, looks different, more modest." "Damn," Trevor shook his head. "And what? Forgave?" "Not really." Ethan looked into his pint glass. "It's just, I don't care. She's not a part of my life anymore." "That's progress." Trevor clapped him on the shoulder. "Proud of you, brother." A customer, a biker with a long beard, came up behind the bar, and Trevor went off to serve. Ethan looked around the bar, a girl with a laptop in the corner, a couple of college students arguing about football. His life was here in Boulder now, with new people and things to do. Rachel came in half an hour later, wearing jeans and a sweater, her blonde hair in a ponytail and her eyes laughing. "Hello, hiker." She sat down next to him, kissing him on the cheek. "Not too tired?" "I'll survive," Ethan smiled. "Want a beer?" "Yeah, something light." She nodded at Trevor. "Trev, don't slip me your experimental ale like last time." "You're insulting me," Trevor grinned, pouring her a lager. "That's for the pros, not you office types." "Ha, funny." Rachel rolled her eyes. "Ethan, tell me, how's the mountain?" "Cool." He showed her a photo on his phone. "The view from the top is amazing. Will you come with me next time?" "If you don't make me run," she chuckled. "I'm more into yoga." They chatted about hiking, work, and a new restaurant in Boulder. Rachel was patient, knowing Ethan was going through a divorce, but she didn't pry. Ethan appreciated that she wasn't trying to fill a void, she was just there. That evening, back home, Ethan was preparing dinner pasta with pesto, something he had learned in class. His neighbor, Tom, a guy in his 30s, looked in, attracted by the smell. "Dude, are you cooking?" Tom stood in the doorway, holding a beer. "I thought you only ordered pizza." "Learning," Ethan chuckled, stirring the sauce. "Want to try it?" "I wouldn't mind." Tom sat down at the table. "Listen, you go hiking, right? Would you like to take me sometime? I'm stuck here with Netflix." "Deal," Ethan nodded, placing the plate in front of him. "Just buy some decent sneakers." "Okay, boss," Tom laughed, trying the pasta. "Damn, this is really good. You're a real boss." Ethan smiled as he sat down across from her. His life was far from perfect, but it was his. He was rebuilding it, and meeting Melanie had shown him he was free. The best revenge was not her downfall, but his new life with hiking, Rachel, pasta, and friends. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.